here, or if you're watching the recording, hello. This is, as I was saying, we're approaching the end of summer here and wanted to have a really casual chat. And we literally did zero prep. You can ask Patrick, other than one voice note I sent out before golfing yesterday. But I have been sort of hearing how people are feeling and the problems people are worried about and what's kind of going on. And so I thought it would be helpful to chat about it. And of course, Patrick Francey joining us here this evening is such a leader in our industry, helps us look behind what the noise is what we call this topic here tonight. And so thanks for being here with us tonight, Patrick.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. So,
Yeah,
although you said we didn't do much prep, I've been deep,
you're
like
prepared.
up to here in a lot of research for a lot of reasons. And so I do feel prepared. I think I can bring a lot.
Well, I know you're prepared. I know you're prepared, but we did not create a prepare uh,
No, we didn't.
plan necessarily. But
I'm just joking. Yes.
you are always prepared. But I think, it's a really interesting time for Alberta
Mhm.
and for a whole lot of reasons. So we'll kind of, get into them. But maybe before we do that, like Patrick, you obviously talk to investors from coast to coast here in
Mhm.
Canada, kind of uh, what is the kind of sentiment you're feeling right now? Is it similar of just a lot of like not sure what to believe or what to feel or confusion? What are you seeing?
Well, I think all of that. And to your point, I am right across the country in terms of the conversations I'm having, the research I'm doing. So, we I think that we go back to the fundamental, which is there's just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
There, for the first time in our history, we're dealing with a very global macro picture, which we've never dealt with before. We're dealing with a level of polarity and divisiveness that we've never dealt with before. So there's a lot of back to what this is about is what's the noise, what's the signals, what do we have to pay attention to as investors, and what do we just kind of, if we want to look at it for entertainment or because we like going into dark places, there's lots of that. But
Yeah,
we
for
have to
sure.
draw back and we have to start to create a thesis, create a thought process, look at possibilities, probabilities, and then take action against that thesis and then check in on it. That's really ultimately what we have to do. But the uncertainty part of it, Natasha and Rodney, is really keeping people sitting on the sidelines. And there's both the pros and the cons to sitting on the sidelines. I think we have to be very clear that in some cases it's appropriate. It makes sense to do that. And in other cases, it's like, okay, you don't need to sit on the sideline. You can actually take action and take advantage of the uncertainty.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly the conversations I'm having as well. And it's like, but there's also a lot of maybe positivity around Alberta and things people are really excited about. Then there's this divisiveness happening. It's very polarizing right now.
Yeah.
And but then there's also lots of opportunity, but you also have to be very cautious as well. So it's like a yin and a yang of it right now.
100%. And I think that if if everybody hears from Alberta, I don't know if everybody is, and you put in the chat if you want. And the other thing I'd like, Natasha, is we're here. We've got this group. Uh, number one, if you can turn on your camera, turn on your camera. It's always nice to talk to smiling faces.
It is.
But put in the chat if you have some specific questions around real estate, around the economy, around other provinces. Let me know. I'll do my best to answer questions. Let's get some questions answered if that's what you would like to do. But to your point, number one, if you're in Alberta, you are in the right now, I'll call it the economic engine of the country.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to be very, very optimistic about when it comes to Alberta. That's not to negate that there's a lot of things going on that you need to pay attention to, but there's all the reasons in the world that if you're living in Alberta, if you're investing in Alberta, you have a lot to look forward to and a lot to be optimistic about.
For sure. Kind of bringing it out of the gate, I think top of mind right now, which I'm sure you're getting asked a lot about, is the separatists and the dynamic around that. I assume you're okay to kind of discuss this, but it's feels a little bit now. Well, we're gonna wait. Let's see. Let's wait till this referendum is over and then see where like cards fall right now. Like, are you seeing a kind of fear, apprehension because of that upcoming date?
I'm gonna, this is, I don't want to minimize the whole separate uh that conversation. I don't want to minimize
Yeah.
it. But having said that, right now it's a lot of noise
Yeah.
and it's causing some uncertainty. Again, it's not a signal. It has been talked about off and on for many years. And then you can look at what Quebec went through and
Yeah.
and this, I'm going to say, is that for those investors who can cut through the noise and just look at it for what it is, uh,
Mhm.
there's where the opportunity is. Because while everybody is sitting around trying to figure out what's going to do and what's going to happen, number one, it'll be years to, even if it comes to some kind of fruition, it'll take years to happen. Nothing's going to happen in a big hurry, and I think that right now it's a distraction. And I'm not, again, I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying is that there's nothing you can control. There's nothing you can do about it. You can participate to the degree that
Right.
you are. You can try and move this whole thing forward in whatever direction you think it should go. Uh, but it's years in the making. And right now it's just a lot of emotion. And when you see a lot of emotion, you need to just step back from it because
Mhm.
it will cloud the data, it will cloud your decision making process. And right now there's just a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could add to that as well, like I think you've made a very good point that regardless of what happens in October, it's not happening right away. It's not like there's a vote and then the next day the switch is flipped. That's not even what really the referendum's entirely about. It's almost like a referendum for a referendum in effect. And I think you also touched on a really important part of what's triggering or what's a bit of the undercurrent is that Alberta is a big part of the economic engine of this country. And
Mhm.
there is a portion of Albertans, whether they stand on either side of the referendum, that are kind of frustrated that they've been a part of this economic engine and maybe their voice isn't being heard as much as like it to be on a national stage.
Mhm.
And I can appreciate that frustration because I've grown up in it. At 43 years, I've heard it my entire life.
Mhm.
And so I can understand where that frustration and that emotion, to your point, is coming from. And so there's a number of individuals that I think are just happy that maybe whatever comes out of this, that the voice might be heard a little bit more on a national stage. And I think that's going to be a part of this conversation, whatever happens with the vote, whatever
Mhm.
happens in October, that I think the goal potentially as part of it is that it's a wider conversation. Alberta's taken a little bit more serious on a national political stance. And if that is what comes out of it, I think that's just a net positive. Of
Right.
course, we'll see with the vote, but there's sort of tiers to the discussion, I think,
Mm.
Yeah.
and that makes it an interesting one too.
I think there's another, if I break it down a little bit, let's just kind of play it out a little bit. What does it mean? We don't really, I mean, let's face it, don't really know. There's lots of
No.
talk. It's all politics. You
Yeah,
don't know the difference between the politics and the policies that will, get implemented if they do all the rest of it. And so what is your worst case scenario? If you're sitting on the sideline worried about what's going to happen with Alberta,
Right.
okay, what do you think's going to happen? It'll be some version of what it is today, and as the economic being the economic engine it is, being the economy it is. That's
Mhm.
not going to change, win or
yeah,
lose.
Yeah.
If nothing happens, it stays virtually somewhere the way it is right now. If you
Right.
don't like that, okay, got it. But and
Yeah.
if it moves forward, it's going to be probably a very positive step for Alberta. So they'll go, but make no mistake, a change that big, if it were to come to fruition, there is a painful transition that we
Oh,
go through.
yeah.
yeah,
That's it. So
yeah,
everybody can cheer about the referendum, but just know that could entail years of transition, of
yeah,
uncertainty, of more dynamic. So, there's a lot of noise about the independents, and they live into this world of everything's going to be positive and it's going to be awesome. No, no, no.
That's
no,
There is another side to
no,
that equation. There is not
yeah,
only upside. I can assure you
yeah,
of that.
yeah,
And there's going to be a downside to it, but nobody's talking about the downside. They're only looking at
yeah,
if we were independent, it would be this and it would be great and it would
yes,
be awesome and we could do this
yeah.
and we could do that and we wouldn't have to feed Quebec and all the stories, right?
Right.
yeah,
Okay, you can believe all that, but you better stop and say, okay, well, what is the downside? And nobody's talking about the downside.
yes. I love that you're bringing that up because that's my personality too, is look at like how does this actually play out, assuming that if
Yeah.
you're on a separatist side,
Yeah.
assuming that that is the eventual goal and that's the pie in the sky, what does it actually like? How does it play out? What are the steps? And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I haven't heard anyone really be able to communicate that this is actually what's going to happen, which just goes back to your point. This is an emotional issue more than it is a technical
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
And I don't have a ton of patience with emotional issues when they're talking about technical things, but it's very real and it's very emotionally driven, and
Yeah.
there are real indicators at stake, you know. So
Mhm. And
yeah.
just
Well, and there's
just to, I want to interject just one quickly here is first and foremost, there's another part of this. So I have businesses in Alberta. I own real estate in Alberta. I've been based in Alberta. I live primarily in British Columbia, but I'm back and forth between the provinces, which is only to say this. When it comes to the noise of that argument in Alberta, I don't want to say I pay zero attention to it, but it's way down on the list of priorities that I want to pay attention to as a business owner and as an investor.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
a
where
great
I'm
point.
at.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've talked about it, because it was just for that reason. It's going to do what it's going to do, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's kind of been how we've been approaching it as well, or I have, let's say.
I'm going to draw a comparison here for a
Yeah,
second, and it's not a direct comparison, but it's similar in that it has a huge impact on investor mentality, what's happening economically. So what's going on in Alberta? Alberta is still doing exceptionally well economically. And this issue, it's a lot of noise. Now, I'm going to come over to British Columbia, where we've had this whole issue around First Nations land claims, Cowichan, Muskie, all of that. Okay,
yeah,
so it doesn't really matter what you think is right or wrong. We don't even need to debate that. The issue is real. There was a court ruling, a decision was made, and now that we live in this world where we're going, who owns the land? Well,
right.
they can downplay it. They can say, well, no, it's been around for years. And we've been talking about this for years.
Hmm.
That's bullshit. It was 10 years in court, yes, which gives it a whole level of seriousness, but it wasn't disclosed. It wasn't talked about until
Right.
the college had made won their case in Richmond. My point is that's very real. That's no longer noise. The banks are uncertain, insurance companies are uncertain, corporations are uncertain. Nothing in British Columbia is moving. And I want to, that may be a little extreme. Real estate is all but shutting down and has shut down. Investment capital is not coming into the province. Investment capital is leaving the province, and people are leaving the province.
Hmm.
This is having a huge economic impact. So the
Yes.
difference between the noise of should we separate, are we going to, when is it going to go, let's go vote, blah, 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 versus no, this is not noise. This is actually happening in real time, real life, and this is what's going on. So that's the difference between noise and a signal.
That's a very good distinction. That's a very good distinction to help control the emotions when the mind starts running,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
like, is this noise or is this a signal?
yeah.
So write that down. That's a good one.
Yeah. That's a good, yeah, excellent way to
That's
put
a
it.
really good way to put it. I like that, Patrick. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem with headlines, right? Is they're meant to get you stirred up and
Of
emotional, and
course. That's a
that's the entire point of it.
that's a job of politicians.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about if depending on I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but
No, yeah, yeah,
you know, I would like to talk about all the really great things that are going on in Alberta, in spite of what we're, seeing
wow,
in terms of the economic battles and wars and, Russia and Ukraine and Middle East and Iran and Trump and the tariffs. And,
yeah,
in spite of all of that, right in Alberta, right in your backyard called Calgary, there is a lot of positive momentum. And we have to look at that. And though when I've just in my research, we do the cycle report, which I'm going to be releasing to the REIN community September 1st. I'll let you, I'll disclose that Calgary is literally right in the middle of a slump cycle. Now, Natasha and Rodney, as you know, that's not a bad thing.
no,
Okay. So we hear slump and we go, oh my gosh. No, this is very, very good. Boom is when we should all be going, get the hell out of here, right?
That's
The boom cycle, when everything is emotion and noise, and we go through that. We've been through those cycles before. We're in the
mhm,
middle of a slump cycle in Calgary. Don't know how long we'll be there. I mean, I'm watching it on a regular basis and seeing what economic indicators. It takes time for these things to unfold. But
mhm.
from a real estate investment opportunity, there are some. This is really a prime time. That's not to
Yeah.
say everything is a buy. It's not to say just go in and pick up deals. No, you have to be very strategic in that thought process. But I want to really kind of articulate as clearly as I can that what's happening in Alberta, what's happening in Calgary specifically, is very positive in spite of all of the seemingly bad news that is occurring.
Mhm.
Alberta's got a great, strong future economically. It's kind of going through this period. It's nothing compared to, I mean, if you want to, look at what's going on in Ontario. Look what's going on right here in
Yeah.
British Columbia. I mean, it is so bad. I mean, they're not even expressing how bad it really is. You have to
Right.
talk to people. You have to get into the conversation with people who are in business, people who are in the real estate industry and can't figure
Mhm.
out how to pay their bills or get leads. I mean, it's a very, very painful situation for many. So
Yeah.
again, I just come back to Alberta for those who are looking at, and I think it's so essential. And I'll go on to one other tangent here a little bit. We have to look at what's happening economically on a global macro to understand that the US and Canada are ramping up more money printing.
Mhm.
The devaluation of fiat currency of our dollars is happening in real time to the
Yeah.
degree you understand it.
Yeah.
Learn about it more, but understand your buying power is degrading week by week, month by month, year by year. And
Yeah.
if you don't get your capital to work, you are going to pay the price in 12, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road. That's the bottom line. And real estate is a hard asset. We must own hard assets.
And it's like we've been in this slump cycle before. It isn't like this is new.
No,
And but this also isn't the same as previous slumps. It doesn't feel the same here. We've been in very different times here. Is it more competitive out there right now in terms of rental market demand and you have to be running a tight ship and all those things? Yes. But that's also when, like you said, that's the time to take action. Right now is the you and you don't need to rush. You don't need to panic. You can take your time. You can be strategic and
Mhm.
people have time for you. There is plenty of resources available in terms of like people's time and energy. If you are talking to your mortgage broker, your realtor, like people aren't drowning like they are in a boom cycle where it's just pure survival, right? So now's
Yeah.
the time to take advantage of those expertise that they have and find what makes sense for you. So it feels different to me, but also I hear that all the time. Well, it's just another cycle for Calgary. I said, yes, I get that. We've been through this many times, but this is not the same either as what we've been through previously. And I think the amount of economic diversity that we are seeing is really, really exciting. Like that
Well,
is
I
Yeah.
mean,
really encouraging.
but Rodney and Natasha, I mean, you've got a memory. You were still in the industry back in, let's say, 2014,
Yes,
2012, 14, 15. I mean, they were pretty painful years
very.
as well, and then chopping sideways and trying to make it all work. So, we went through that cycle and we came out the other side of it. And for those who were able to manage, who actually did a good job and when they did their buy, when they and how they managed their real estate and their properties and managed their investments, they came out the other side looking pretty good. And yeah, there was some people that went through some tough times. I get it, but
Yeah,
those who paid attention on the buy side when they entered the game came out the other side way better off for doing it.
way better. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's I'd actually be curious both your opinions on this because one of the interesting things about the at least the Calgary conversations, like the price of oil is so it's not suffering and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you never want to cheer global issues, but the global issues are they are not going to get untethered anytime soon.
Mm,
And it's exciting to see Calgary expand outside of just the energy sector, but the energy sector is so core to what Calgary is and is going to be. And so to have this kind of slump cycle and yet a pretty positive price of oil as far as the industry is concerned here, having those things line up like that is not historically how it's always felt. It's kind of moved in a different direction. It kind of followed the price of energy, and I think that's maybe a part of what makes it feel like a different kind of slump cycle right now is that it's like it feels keyed up in a different way or set like
Mm.
the tables being set in a different way. And maybe that's just I've been so much of my life tied to the price of oil. It was the weekly conversation, and it's still important and it's still a heartbeat, and I'm very much pro energy, but it's not to the same like everybody's thing that they check in the morning like it once was. And
Mhm.
yet it's a pretty good price, and yet like it's kind of an interesting mix of these things. And if you're looking at a long-term scale, like I said, I just don't think any of these international issues around the price of oil are going anywhere anytime soon. I'd be curious to hear what you thought of what the numbers are saying, because I said earlier, I don't love emotional responses to technical things.
Yeah.
That might be a little bit of my emotion to what I've seen as a technical number for most of my life.
Yeah. It's interesting about oil right now. And, there's lots of conversation. I don't follow oil on a day to day like you, Rodney, but I do pay attention to it. I don't know what it's at today. Is it $80 or something? It's somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know what it's
somewhere in
priced at.
there. Yeah, I've
But
stopped following daily myself. Better for
the,
me.
and I've listened to a lot of really, I mean, very, very accomplished experts because I do pay attention because I'm looking at what's global macroeconomic impact, and they're the opinions on either side are pretty crazy. There's still guys out there that are saying oil's going to go to $150 a barrel, $200 a barrel. But it is interesting, the argument to that. And I listened to other economists, a couple other economists, and experts in that space. And they come back right away and they're going, it's not going to happen. I get that reserves are drawn down huge. US has never been lower in terms of the reserves. There's a lot of those stories that are unfolding. But somebody pointed out very clearly, he goes, the what is it? The cure for high oil prices is high oil prices,
Yeah,
because ultimately what happens if prices of oil do spike, which they may for a short period of time, everything slows down. The
yeah,
demand goes to
yeah,
zero, or
yeah,
comes way down, and then all of a sudden the prices have to come down because the
yeah.
demand goes away. So it's a little bit of a balancing act that happens when these things go on. And ultimately there's a very strong argument that oil prices are going to be probably in that $70 to $90 range for a very long time, and that's the
Exactly.
general consensus. So
Yeah,
you know but
exactly. And that's actually kind of the sweet spot for Calgary.
mm,
People think, oh, the better, higher price of oil, the better it is. Like we're printing money, and it's not the case. There is a price, to your point, where it gets too expensive, and it starts having a reverse effect. And so most
Mhm.
people in town want it to kind of stay in a stable sort of range of price for a long period of time is a net benefit to Calgary and its operations, as far as
mm,
anything I've ever seen.
mm.
And so like what I've kind of looked into a little bit, it aligns a lot with that. And I think that's because it's so often like, oh, what's the energy sector? That's Calgary's reflective of that. That's what's going to go on. Okay, that's
Mm.
Yeah.
important and it's good. But if it's a stable kind of, it's not going to drop off, but it's also not going to, spike super hard. I would say that's a box ticked when it comes to analyzing what's happening in the energy sector.
And if it spikes, it'll be by the looks of it. I mean, the argument's very strong for it'll be a shorter term
Shorter
blip
spurt. Yeah.
that kind of happens. But back to your point, Rodney, that you said it's a slump cycle, but it feels a little different than it has in the past. And the reason it feels different is because you've still got a very robust economy. Just was looking in your chat when you consider some of the challenges that people are, commenting on in terms of rents
Yeah.
and what's going on there. So let's just address that issue a little bit. So
Please.
first off, and Natasha, this, and I've been talking about it. Here's the problem with doing the kind of research that I've done and that you do as well, Natasha, you've learned to do
Mhm.
and how you operate now. The challenge is we see the signals today,
Yeah.
but they don't play out. It's not a switch. An economy is this kind of dynamic, living, breathing thing, and it takes time for things to play out. Well over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, we were warning a lot about what we were seeing on the supply side of what's going on in Calgary. We were seeing a lot of developers pivot to purpose built. We were seeing lots of do-it-yourselfers who were small developments, fourplex, six, eightplex infills, and then there was just a glut of that. CMHC was delivering on that. That was part of government agenda to supply affordable housing, that or whatever story that they used to bring CMHC into the picture.
Yeah, don't get
So
me started.
now, and then you had a lot of demand side of it because you had a lot of immigration coming into the province. And by the way, Alberta still has a lot of immigration, but it's cooled. It's slowed down a little bit, but Alberta's still leading the country in
Yeah.
terms of immigrate and interprovincial migration. Ontario and British Columbia are both draining the tanks, and they're all heading to Alberta.
Yeah.
So, you've got a fundamental problem with a lot of supply, and not in all property types, by the way.
Yeah.
Lots of purpose-built issues that are going on, and that's going to take time to clean up in terms of absorption. It's like jobs. You look at unemployment; it seems a little bit high for a province that's doing really well. It's still doing really well. The challenge is you've got more people coming in. Jobs have not
That's
uh,
right.
absorb the population, so it skews the number.
Yeah.
That too shall pass. So it's going to take some time to clean up. And what does that mean if you're an investor? Well, if you own existing properties, you guys are going through it. You're having to drop rents, you're having to be competitive. All of the things, it's taking longer to rent a property out. You're having to put incentives in place. I
Mhm.
get it. Could you have seen this coming 2 years ago? Yes. Could you have
Mm.
reacted differently? Yes. You are where you are. It is what it is. Now you have to say,
Yeah.
okay, well, what am I going to deal with going forward? I would,
Yeah.
if you, the key here, don't panic. Do what you can, get as liquid and stay as liquid as you can. If you've got great tenants, hang on to them. As a matter of fact, I've shared this strategy, and Natasha, you're in the property management business as well. You understand it very, very well. But if you've got a great tenant and their lease is going to come up in 3 or 4 months, I would approach them now. Go, hey, you've been a great tenant.
Mhm.
How about if we renew your lease and I give you a great deal? Like, let's,
Yeah.
so you're thinking in advance of saying, okay,
Yeah.
they're a great tenant. They've been paying their rent. Let's see if we can get them to sign for an additional 12 months.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's extend your lease for
Really
12
good
months,
tip.
and then get that handled early. Don't wait. Don't be
Yes.
reactive. Ask yourself, how can you be proactive? And this is a time to sit down with Natasha and her team and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. How can I be proactive? And then get that
Yes,
guidance and maybe take some actions around that.
for sure. I think what we're seeing too, Jim, and like how long is this going to take? And Edmonton and Calgary are kind of similar in this way. When there's demand, the great thing about sort of the climate is we can react to demand from a development standpoint relatively quickly. So new developments can go up quick, permits can get approved relatively quick in comparison to maybe other major Canadian cities. And so going back a few years when demand is super high, projects are like coming through pretty quickly. And so, just like Patrick said, there was a lot of purpose-built rental projects. CMHC was pouring gas on that as well. And so, but it slows down just as quick as it picks up as well. My dad's in the new construction space. I can tell you right now that all of them are having to sharpen their pencils to a
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
zero 0.01% of a percentage. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the builders are squeezing everyone, and it's because construction has slowed. When times are flying, everything's great, right? But right now it's so the construction comes to a halt just as quickly as it picks up.
Yeah.
And so they're nowhere near developing at the level or putting in applications to develop at the speed that they were a couple of years ago. So it will pass, this too shall pass, but it's just sort of like we're kind of at that point where we have to let this stuff absorb and let these projects shake out, and they will. And if you are, that's why I was kind of asking where, especially in the suburbs of Calgary or Edmonton, like you can add quite a bit of these units relatively quickly, especially on purpose-built rentals, four-story wood frame buildings, those go up super quick and they can inject hundreds of units very quickly. So depending
Mhm.
where you are, it can be even more competitive. So, there's nothing wrong right now with having to add some type of incentive if you need to stand out. And also just making sure even that the way you're advertising things is the most appropriate. Like some people, just as a quick tip, will charge utilities on top of their base rent. Well, put the ad up at the base rent, put the utilities in the description, for example. That alone will get more eyeballs on your ad. So just little things that make your ad stand out more than others. But that is just a little bit how it is. And as fall approaches, it seems like the upper units become more available in these suited properties, or sorry, more desirable as families get settled for kind of back to school. And then the basement suites can be a little bit more challenged through that
I want
previous
to,
months.
I see Jim had put something in the chat and had comment there, and I think Jim, you're really on point. And one of the things that you're, being repaired and repainted as tenants exit. Here's a fundamental that we run into, and I don't care if it's real estate or business. There's a when things slow down in business, real estate or business, one of the first things we do is we say, where can we save money? Where can we cut
Right.
costs? And in a business, many businesses go marketing. Oh, the marketing's obviously not working. It's a line item. It's costing me X. Let's cut back on marketing. And so real estate investors, they look at the cost of an ad, they look at cost of running those ads, and they go, let's cut that back. Okay, well, no, when it comes to marketing your unit in this kind of environment, double down. You've
Mhm.
got to get louder. You've got to be out there. You got to stand out. Natasha's point that she made in terms of how you structure an ad, it's never more important. Before you could kind of throw stuff up against the wall and somebody would bite. No more. You need that hook. You need that headline that says, pick me, look at me. That's what you need to do. So it's always about benefits, 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 benefits. And then back to what you're saying, Jim, in the repair and maintenance of the property. Again, we go, we don't have the money. I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to. Why should I repair it? It's going to sit empty for 2 months. Well, don't repair it and or maintain it and it'll sit empty much longer. This is
Yeah.
the painful part of this. You have to. It's not an option. You need to market that unit. You need to be very mindful and intentional about your marketing. And aside from incentives, you need to make enough noise that people look at you. And then again, when they show up at that property, they got to walk in and go, wow, this feels like home. And that's
Yeah.
your job. And that really is the critical part of it. And I get the property management. If you've got a property manager, I mean, we could talk about property managers for hours and not come
Oh,
to a
yeah.
conclusion. So
Yes, for sure. For sure. Um, yeah, that's it. It will pass.
it will,
Um,
it will.
yeah, absolutely will. What's next?
Any other questions out there? Any
I
other?
don't think we had anything.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I was just to,
I
to,
was
to
gonna,
tail on that a
yeah.
little bit on the property management. It's interesting because we're seeing things like you're talking about. There's people coming from all over Canada to Alberta, and they're bringing with them things that they're used to in other provinces or expectations in other provinces. Like we've noticed just in the last year or two, the demand for air conditioning is different than it was 5 years ago. You really only need it like 2 weeks of the year, but when you're used to it from wherever you're coming from, all of a
Mm,
sudden that becomes a competitive
Yeah.
advantage of your
advantage.
rental
Yeah.
rate, right?
Yeah.
And then you're also seeing that on the development side where you've seen people come in from other markets, develop stuff here with the same expectation as they would have in another market. So we're looking at an acquisition for Welshire right now. Parking, huge thing, right? This is a driving city. One of the things we love about this, there's more parking units than there is units. Like that's awesome. It's a great revenue generator. It's a lot of those things. But then down the street, there's a building that has zero parking. So if you're a tenant, what are you looking at? What is the first thing that you're turning one off immediately and you're turning the other one on right away? And it's both are being affected to a degree from out of Alberta influence, which is really
Right.
interesting to see it both on the development side and then on the rental demand side and how they're kind of influencing each other.
Mhm.
Which is why it's so important to not just look at like we want to be the experts in Alberta in the real estate in Alberta, but like you have to be paying attention to what's happening outside of the province as well, because it's going to affect it. Even those little competitive advantages or those little things that people are doing and are paying attention to, right? It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, AC is a big one. Anyone coming from
Yeah.
Ontario?
And it never, I mean, I don't remember
It
ever
wasn't.
being a concern until the last year or two.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
it's like, it's a pretty big, that's one of the things that this project we're looking at. They're roughing in AC
And
throughout.
electric
It's a big
vehicles.
building, but
There's a question in the chat that was just looking at it saying, does
oh,
that
that's a tough one.
get, you get an extra $100 a month for AC, do you think? Or is there a value that you can assign to it yet?
I,
Natasha, you'd be better
I
suited
would
to answer. It's
say,
hard to say
uh,
dollar figure.
yeah, I would probably say $100 if I had to add it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The, so like we have a property that doesn't have it, and we were looking, okay, how could we sort of use that as an incentive to, tenants next year. If we're going to increase your rent next year and we add AC, and then we can do the math on our end, for that unit, if that makes sense, right? And maybe
Mhm.
that'll be an incentive for them to sign the renewal, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
But there would need to be a cost offset in some way for us on the, you know, rental side of things. But roughly that and EV chargers, those are the two things we're getting lots of questions on right now.
Yeah. Now, what about some that are maybe challenged? If you've got a hard no on a pet policy, that can change the game, open the door to taking pets and pets within conditions of what those
Yes.
pets have to
Yes.
be, and actually doing the diligence on that pet. Um, that opens up a huge door in terms
Yes.
of getting a whole new realm or new ream of tenant possibilities.
Yeah, we have pets on approval on all of our ads.
Yeah.
The market right now is nowhere near strong enough to say no pets,
Yeah.
unless you just have a really low rental rate. Like it just cuts out a huge chunk of your population that
Huge.
Yeah.
it's just not the market to be doing that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and you have the pet fee as well,
nine
right?
out of
Like it's
10.
that's part of it as well, right?
Yeah, Darren said we had a turnover end of May, and the ad went out responsive. 9 out of 10 were asking about pets. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Doesn't
Exactly.
Yeah.
surprise me.
And in Alberta, we can charge either a pet fee
Yeah.
or a pet security deposit. You can
Yeah.
do one or the other. We do the pet fee. It's just a flat thing per month per
Yeah.
pet, and that's it. Not refundable. So, you
Do
know,
what do what do you charge? Do you have a range that you charge for like a cat or a dog or per
yeah,
pet?
we do $25 per cat and
Yeah.
$50 per dog.
Yeah. It seems to be the going rate. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's pretty reasonable. And people pay it like it's their pets.
Hmm.
They love their pets. So and honestly, most of the problems we've ever had are not with pets. It's
Yeah.
usually human driven, not
Yeah.
Yeah.
animal driven. I don't think we've had an animal. I should knock on wood.
No cool. Yeah.
um, but
Listen, yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah, you do
that's
it long enough, you're gonna find a problem with any like there's gonna be
sure,
a
of
problem. That's
course.
part of the fun of property management. Like
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
do it long enough, you're gonna have some tails, but like if you're vetting properly, like Patrick said, you vet the pet as well as the person, right? And it's all just
yeah,
part of your process, and then
for
you're fine.
sure.
I want to, I'll share something else about what I'm seeing economically now and a thought process. Again, I'm very, I look at it and I go, okay, I look at what's going on economically. I create a thesis, right? Because we have to have a thesis. We have to say, however you view the world, if you're going to be an investor, if you're going to be in business, a career, whatever you're doing, you have to create some kind of a thought process, a thesis of something of what's going on, what the vision looks like, where you're going in the future. So when I look at what's been happening over the past, well, really since March 2020, when the lockdowns occurred, you know, I've been very in it. And I got to be, I have to be very honest about it. They nicknamed me the doom and gloomer boomer for a reason. Like I was not I wasn't happy about what was going on,
Yeah.
and I'm still not. And I can get very political about it because I think that always comes back to leadership or lack thereof. Having
Mhm.
said that, this is a global phenomena that's happening. Canada is not the only country that's going through these kinds of challenges. Every country is going through
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
kinds of challenges, and worse, by the way. Hard to sometimes. Here I go, doom and gloomer boomer, and I'm not that, by the way. That was just a nickname because one of the guys I work with is a rose-colored glasses guy. So the point of it is when I look at, and I've been doing so much research, particularly over the past 2 or 3 months, as I've kind of getting ready to release the cycle reports. And so I've been in the research deep. And I have to say that I am left very optimistic about what's going on in Alberta. And here's why. It's not because Alberta's just crushing it and real estate's awesome and we're in this boom cycle. That's not the case at all. But
Mhm.
now we can look at it and say, okay, well, when I was looking at it in 2020, 21, 22, 23, I could see a lot of downside. And
Yeah.
now I'm going, okay, we've kind of rode the downside of it. We've kind of come, have we bottomed? Maybe not. But how much downside is left, do I think? If there is still downside left, it's not
Yeah.
much. If there
Yeah.
is downside, I think
I
this is a
agree.
time to do your diligence, do your research, be
Mhm.
very strategic in the deals that you do put together. Uh, I think this is some great opportunity because you got no pressure, no rush, but the pressure you should feel is get your money to work
Yeah.
and own some hard assets, real estate being one of them.
You sound like you've been in our Welsh team meetings because we that's exactly the time for us, right? Like we were patient because the pricing wasn't there, the deals weren't there, but now they're getting there and we're getting interesting looks at creative deals because the conversation's just different. But we can't wait another year. We got to go get the product now, right? Like we waited, we did our patience. Now's the time to move. We're not going to wait till the perfect spot. It's the time is now, and we got to get that capital to work, right? So it's just that's like I said, it sounds like you were in our meeting this week.
And you
So
can't time the bottom, right? You,
no,
you
Yep,
can't
yep.
perfectly go, okay, like, people asking that, should I
Today's the
wait? Should I
day.
move now? Like, there's no way to know. Like, it'll be behind us before we know, right?
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
But let's kind of talk about, like the diversifications happening in Alberta. The like data centers obviously are a huge topic and controversial and but it does show kind of the level of investment of different types of industry and businesses maybe that are t taking a look at Alberta. But I'm sure you're researching that, Patrick, in terms
Mhm.
of what that's bringing to our province.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the thing about Alberta is that the diversification bleeds out beyond energy. But going back to that energy sector, it creates other opportunities outside the energy
Right.
sector, right?
Yeah.
Because of what's happening economically. So yes, I mean, for sure, energy is a huge part of what drives Alberta. The good news is around that's not going away anytime soon. And I think that as a matter of fact, given what's going on with the US, given what Carney and Trump are battling against with tariffs, I think Carney's going to be forced to, bite the bullet and actually follow through on his MOU and all the rest of the things that
Right.
are promising. But to your point, the data centers, especially in the initial phases of building and building them out, are going to create a lot of jobs, of a lot of opportunities. They're going to drive the need for new infrastructure. So
yeah,
when we start to look at that, and then you look at the agriculture side of it, so all of those things are driving an economy in the Alberta economy far differently than they have in the past. And I
Mhm.
think that's really what we have to consider. And by the way, one of my biggest pet peeves about what's happening in Canada overall, where Alberta is more of an exception to this rule, Canada is having what we is being very openly referred to as a productivity emergency, a productivity crisis. Now, what
Yeah.
does that mean? Well, we look at our GDP and they're talking 3%. And listen, I'm telling you right now that, excuse my France, is bullshit. There's not a chance in hell that is
No.
3%. And I know how they make up those numbers in terms of how they structure it. It's all smoke and mirrors. We'll be lucky if it's 1%. Alberta, on the other hand, are driving, uh, not in a big way, but certainly more. They're more private sector friendly. The challenge that we face in Canada is we're very public sector focused. As a matter of fact, many of the jobs, I don't want to say, yeah, actually, most jobs that we've created over the past 5 or 6 years have been public sector. Our
Right.
our productivity continues to drop as small, medium enterprises continue to lay flat, trend slightly down, as many businesses are opening, are closing. Alberta, on the other hand, continues to trend slightly up, which means more productivity, which drives jobs, which drive actually business, and that's a very key part of what another key thing that sets Alberta apart. Back to
Mhm.
your diversity and in terms of what is driving the economy. As much as
Right.
there is public sector, and we need public sector, I'm not
Sure.
beating
Yeah.
up on police and all the things that we have. It's a necessary part. We do have too much bureaucracy, and that's provincially. I think the
Yeah.
biggest change that needs to happen, and I'll just stop after this. We keep talking about the CUSMA and trade agreements.
Mm.
We have a fundamental problem in Canada, and we don't even have trade agreements that make sense within our own country, within
Yeah.
our own
Yes.
provinces.
Yeah.
Interprovincial trade is just an absolute train wreck.
It
And,
is.
Yes.
if we can get out of our own way in that part of it, I mean, the fact that I can't go to Alberta and buy BC wine or vice versa, or go
Yes.
to
Yeah.
Ontario. I mean, are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Crazy.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely crazy.
yeah.
I think
An
we
excellent
should
point.
have a whole night just about that because I think it's
But
very
wine?
easy for yeah, with wine. You have to bring your own though because we can't trade across provinces apparently.
It's actually
It's
illegal to bring a case of wine
Yeah,
across
I
the
know
border.
it's crazy. It's so crazy, but it's because we're so often looking outward
Yeah.
at problems, international and tariffs and all these things, and there's so much that we can do within our own country to just fix what we're already doing, refine it, cut out a lot of the fat. Like that's where if we're putting energy and emotion into politics, that's what it should be into tangible, real solutions. And they don't feel as good because they're not as
Yeah.
emotionally exciting and they're not as buzzy words, but like there is solutions and they're in front of us and they're in our own country and we're in a very unique position as Canadians that we should be taking advantage of them. But that's I don't want to derail the conversation because I think that, like I said, could turn into its own
Well,
long conversation, right?
yeah. The trade interprovincially, like what is happening in Alberta right now is going to help set us up for that if there is ever
Yes.
improvements in that. But so
But,
there's
but
two questions here to kind of tie this
yeah,
into. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick. Do you
I
want
want
me to?
to, yeah, before I see the one of the questions there, but and we can get
Yeah.
to that. Happy to do that. There's a fundamental, what are you paying for gas in Calgary today? What's a liter of gas? Anybody know?
I
About
haven't gone and
Rodney always fills it up for
I
me.
always fill up and it's been I've been not
buck
trying to
fifty
look the
four,
last
$1.54.
2 days. I'm trying to
buck
go as
fifty
far as
four,
I can.
buck
Wow.
54.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
How
Angela.
do you feel about a buck 54?
No, it's $1.77.
Oh,
Dollar
gee.
77.
I gotta
There we
Yeah.
find a
go.
buck 54.
But
Yeah.
unless if you go to GP, then it's $1.56. That's the only place where you can get it at the moment.
Oh, a buck 54, buck
Okay.
77. What do you
Yeah.
think about
Buck
that?
50
Like,
to buck 70.
is that piss you off? Is it like ridiculous? Like, what are you feeling about that?
It's painful everywhere. I don't know. How do you feel,
Well,
Monique?
there's a
Me,
fundamental,
I
right?
drive an expensive petrol guzzler of a car, so I'm paying nearly $2 a litre.
Yeah.
So my trick is I drive all the way to Buffalo Run to the First Nations Costco, and
Yeah.
I go fill up there, and it's 20 cents cheaper than anywhere else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so there you go. So, there's one of my favorite sayings I overuse, which is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Perspective gives you your perception, which is then your reality. So a
Mhm.
buck 54, buck 77, all sounds ridiculous. Okay. I paid for regular gas today, $2.10.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Diesel, 254 or something. I mean, like it's ridiculous. 237, depends where you want to go shop around.
Yeah.
So here's the reason I bring this up. So as we look at the diversity of Alberta's economy, but you guys are in it. I have the pleasure of bouncing between provinces. I joke about this all the time. I go home to Edmonton. I go to, to visit my business in Edmonton, and I go shopping. It's like I'm visiting a factory outlet. It is, everything just feels and looks so cheap. It's like,
That's cheap.
whoa, this is crazy. How cheap is it? And I don't have provincial sales tax, and
That
my tax base is different. And, so as much as we look at, and by the way, you're also, this is a fact, this is data. Alberta is the highest income per capita, by the
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
by
And
a mile.
by a mile. Yeah. And like we got to get to these questions, so I don't want to
we
go on
will.
too much
Yeah.
more, but I think that speaks also back to this whole separation where a lot of this stuff is all about what's wrong with our province
Yeah.
when they're pushing for separation.
Yeah.
And if you dig under the hood on who's the most vocal about it, they're objectively doing okay. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot of those things we're actually doing it pretty good here. So it's like
You are.
a grain of salt's pretty
Mhm.
important when you're trying to make a pretty massive decision like pulling out of a country, right? So
And there's another side of, all of this that we should not step over. And the reality that we are dealing with, which is a global phenomena of inflation.
yeah.
There's all sorts of numbers that go on, but I think
Yeah.
inflation, food, gas, rents, all the rest, rents are coming down. So cost of, you know, is coming down. That's good on the inflation, but we're up about, I think 30, depends what numbers you look at, is 30% plus over the past 5 years of inflation. Okay. So as much as they say CPI now is up 3%, okay.
Right.
Okay. That's the speed of inflation. That's, CPI is actually the speed, but 30% over 5 years. Well, okay. That's 6% a year average, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Have wages gone up 6% a year? Not a freaking chance, right?
No.
No.
And so people are also feeling the pain of that. And so again, the cure for high prices is high prices because people just spend. They don't have the discretionary income. We're
Yeah.
seeing Visa statements increase, fewer payments, payments on Visa, like credit cards being made. We're seeing not so much in Alberta, but you look at Ontario and you look at what's happening in British Columbia, and the number of insolvencies is going up like dramatically, record highs in terms of filings. So, there's a lot to be said of what's going on economically that's affecting Alberta. It's affecting the whole country, but Alberta sits in a very, very good position. Alberta and Saskatchewan, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Jim, Jim asked about the city of Calgary has made any recent changes to zoning so as to allow multifamily properties on an infill. So, Jim, there was a blanket zoning for the entire city of Calgary that allowed for what you see now as these infill developments, like six plexes, eight plexes, 10 plexes, that kind of thing. That was repealed this summer. So any new projects are not moving ahead on that. So if you look up the blanket rezoning, you'll see that. But that was a pretty significant change in both directions. Like it allowed for quite a bit of development, not thought through well enough, in my opinion, in terms of parking and infrastructure and, maybe density in some of these areas. But it just seems like it's like on or off right now. And I think hopefully the city will take some time to think about where the actual middle of this is and plan something a little bit more intentionally. So that will help though with the density of rental properties in some of these areas because there's no further development happening on this blanket rezone program that they had.
Mm-hmm. Key towns in Alberta,
Oh
other than
yeah.
Calgary.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, there's a number of good ones. I would be taking a very serious look at Red Deer. They're just coming into a slump cycle right now, so I would take a very serious look at Red Deer. I haven't looked. I've always been a fan of Lethbridge. It's just a kind of a steady, kind of chug away kind of city, and I'm always been a big fan of Lethbridge. Although I haven't unpacked that uh, particular research specifically to there.
Yeah.
So in that area, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat's always a consideration. Again, I haven't looked at the research, but they are. But you have to look at Red Deer, Lethbridge for sure. I think Airdrie is also a consideration. So I'm right now, given what's happening in the overbuild kind of purpose built, if you're kind of that do it yourselfer, I would be going to my own view right now without doing specific research. But what I am seeing is the kind of the, I'll call them bedroom communities for lack of better terminology right now. Look at those outlying centers where the drive's 20 minutes into the major centers, right? And that's driven by a lot by affordability and lifestyle. And people are really becoming conscious of both those things.
hmm To add to that, I agree with everything you said. The other thing that's maybe off the radar for people right now is Strathmore, east of Calgary. It's a little further than that 20 minutes, but with the de Havilland plant going in there, as well as I don't really see anyone talking about the drywall manufacturing plant that they are putting in there. So, as far as I know, we haven't manufactured drywall in Western Canada in I don't know how long. And those two are going to be huge employment opportunities where Strathmore and Chestermere, which Chestermere has a little bit too much built right now. Strathmore, there has been very little development new in the last however many years, decades, and could really use some good like rental housing providers in that area, I think. So that could be one to look at that's still quite affordable and I think is honestly going to pop off as soon as those two things are underway and going. So that could be a little like outlier one that maybe some people aren't thinking of.
Yeah, if they'll put those pins in those cities, honestly, I think that you'll see in a couple of years that we can replay this one, and there'll be some hits there for
We'll
sure.
see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
See if we had our crystal ball.
Yeah,
Darren mentioned, income is down in Alberta over the last few years. Medium after tax income.
88K in 2020, and then 85K in 2024. So a slope in that direction.
Okay.
I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that, Patrick. I
I,
feel like part of that is the expanding workforce and just the average, like
yeah, maybe.
I'd have to look
I
into
haven't.
that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that number, Darren. So that, but it's an interesting. I'll definitely dig into it a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, we are at the top of the hour here. That flew by. See, we don't need a plan.
Good conversation.
Patrick, I can't thank you enough for doing this on the fly
Yes.
and joining us
Yeah,
here
it's been
tonight.
great.
I know we could talk for hours, I'm sure. But that was really great. Hopefully everybody, took something out of it, or if you're
Mhm.
watching the recording, yes, send us your thoughts or feedback. And as always, just, what is Wellshire up to right now? As Rodney kind of mentioned, we are on a trajectory for growth now. We are seeing good opportunities out there in the marketplace, and we really want to grow. We have had a good 3 years in our books now, and are looking at our next acquisitions as we speak. So if Wellshare is of interest to you, you want to place capital here in hard assets in Alberta, then please reach out. We're here to work with you and get your cash or registered funds invested right here in our backyard.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
And
Thanks,
then the
Anything else
Patrick.
last
to add?
thing, in
Yeah.
October will be our next mastermind where you'll be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
see Patrick in person here in Calgary. So you'll be seeing some advertising for that very shortly. We're
Great.
excited to have another great event in October, right around referendum time too. So it'll be a
Oh,
little
yeah. It'll be
spicy.
hot time.
It'll be a little spicy. Looking forward to
Thanks,
it. Thanks so much
Nelson.
for your time, Patrick. Really
Exactly.
Thanks.
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
soon.